After my father passed away, the house was legally left to me in his will. But soon after, my mother kicked me out so she could move in with her new family, acting like it was hers. I didn't fight it back then. I just walked away. 15 years later, I decided to reclaim what rightfully belonged to me, but they started threatening me. So I didn't hesitate. I went to the police to get justice. My mother kicked me out of my own house so her new family could live there. I was 10. Now I'm 25, and I've come back to take what rightfully belongs to me. When my dad died, everything fell apart. He was the only one who truly cared about me. He wasn't perfect, but he was my person. His death split my life into before and after. Within 6 months, my mom married Troy, a loud, smug man with a grin that made you want to break his nose. Along with him came two kids. They moved into our home, and I was sent to live with my grandparents. No tears, no goodbye, just my bags at the door and her flat words. They need space too. I didn't understand. I was a kid. Over time, I learned that the house I'd been born in had been left to me by my dad. He saw it coming, I guess. His will was airtight. She couldn't sell the place, couldn't claim it, couldn't transfer it. I became the legal owner at 25. So here I am, not for payback, just to reclaim what's mine. I left my job in marketing to launch my own business, and I planned to rent the house out to get started. Clean, straightforward. But when I called my mom to let her know, she didn't answer. Not the first time, not the third. I waited a few days, then drove there myself. Melanie, her daughter with Troy, opened the door. Her expression was pure contempt. "You again?" she said. Inside, nothing felt familiar. My photos were gone. My room had been repainted. Even the smell had changed. I told her I wanted to talk to my mother. She disappeared without a word. A moment later, Sandra appeared in the kitchen doorway and froze like she'd seen a ghost. We hadn't spoken in over a decade. "Oh, it's you," she said. No hug, no smile, just silence, and a look in her eyes like she was thinking, "Why are you here?" I didn't expect a warm welcome, but her coldness still cut deep. Melanie stood nearby with her arms crossed, silently watching as my mother dropped into a chair without even offering me to sit. I said I wanted to talk about the house. Sandra raised an eyebrow like I'd said something absurd, like I had no right to speak. I explained I planned to rent it out and needed capital to start a business. Her answer was flat. "We live here. We have nowhere else to go." No hint that the house wasn't hers. No surprise. Like she'd decided long ago I'd never come back. I reminded her of the will, said I was now the sole legal owner. Sandra smirked. Her reaction wasn't fear or shock. It was annoyed contempt. She claimed the house was built by her husband and she wasn't about to leave because of some paper. That's when I knew words wouldn't solve anything. I stood and left without saying goodbye. My grandparents were waiting on the porch. I told them what had happened. They just nodded like they'd expected it. My grandfather said quietly, "Your father planned ahead, but it's up to you now." I couldn't sleep for days. I replayed every word, every look. I wasn't hurt. I was disgusted. I felt nothing in that house, no memory, no warmth. It wasn't mine anymore. She'd gutted it with her indifference, with her arrogance. But the document remained, the will that clearly stated, "The house is mine." And all I had to do was stop being the boy left on the porch and start being the man who came back to claim what was his. The next day, I started looking for a lawyer. I wasn't planning to rush things. I wanted to handle it properly. No drama. Just send a notice through my lawyer. Give them 3 or 4 months to move out. But that day changed everything. It was the 15th anniversary of my father's death. I organized a memorial service, fed the homeless, handed out warm clothes to underprivileged kids. It was my way of honoring the man who gave me everything. I invited my grandparents, a few relatives from his side, childhood friends. And, strangely enough, I sent an invitation to Sandra, just so she'd know. No response. No yes, no no. Not even opened. I figured maybe the message didn't go through and decided to stop by again. Melanie opened the door. Her tone was sharp, like I was a problem. "You again?" I told her I was there to hand over the invitation in person. She scoffed and said, "That was 100 years ago. Why stir it up?" Then she slammed the door in my face. I stood there like an idiot, chest tight, mind blank. I left a note on the table. If she cares, she'll call. The next day, Sandra called. Long silence. Then she said she couldn't come. She had to take Melanie to a checkup. I paused, then muttered, "Of course. They're your priority. We're nothing." She exhaled sharply and started blaming me. I reminded her how she abandoned me. She cut me off. "They're family. They need me." And I didn't, apparently. Then she said something I'll never forget. "Stop living in the past. Your dad's dead. Get over it." Something snapped. I didn't yell. I just said, "Don't come. You've said enough." And I hung up. An hour later, I signed the notice with my lawyer. The countdown had begun. The eviction notice was delivered 2 days later. Certified mail, signature required. I knew the moment they got it because I received 10 missed calls from an unknown number in under an hour. I didn't answer. I wanted everything to stay documented. That evening, Sandra showed up at my grandparents' house. I wasn't there, but they told me later. She tried playing the victim, said she was blindsided, that I had no right to do this. My grandfather calmly told her that the house was legally mine and that trying to guilt me into reversing the decision wouldn't work. Sandra didn't take it well. She accused them of turning me against her. She even cried. Not for me, for her own image. I finally agreed to meet with her, on my terms. I told her the time, the place, and that I'd only talk if she kept it civil. When she arrived, I deliberately made her wait an hour. I needed her to know she didn't control the pace anymore. When I entered the room, she looked up with that familiar expression, half scorn, half entitlement. "Are you done punishing me?" she said. I ignored the bait. "Let's get to it," I said. She asked what the notice was about, pretending not to understand. I told her she had 30 days to leave. She laughed, tossed the letter onto the table and said, "I'm not moving out because of some stupid paper." I stayed calm. "Then we'll let the court enforce it," I replied. Her jaw clenched. "I gave birth to you. Don't try to outsmart me. That house was built by my husband and inherited by his son," I answered. That hit harder than I expected. Her face tightened, but she stayed seated. I could see it in her eyes, panic behind the anger. She wasn't used to me standing firm. She thought I was still that boy who didn't fight back. But that kid was gone. I stood, looked her in the eye, and said, 28 days left. I suggest you start packing." Then I walked out. 3 days after the meeting, things escalated. It started with Melanie showing up at my grandparents' doorstep, unannounced and furious. She shouted loud enough for the neighbors to hear, accusing me of terrorizing a pregnant woman and threatening to call the cops on me for harassment. My grandfather calmly told her to leave before they called the police themselves. She left, but not quietly. The next morning, I got a voice message from Troy. His voice was slurred with rage, every word soaked in threats. "You messed with the wrong guy," he growled. "One punch and you'll forget your own name. Come near my house again and I'll put you in the ground." He clearly had no idea how incriminating that message was. I didn't respond. I saved it, forwarded it to my lawyer, and scheduled an appointment with the local police department. I explained everything, played the recording, and filed a report. They took it seriously, especially when I mentioned the eviction date. "If there's any confrontation," one officer said, "don't engage. Let us handle it." I nodded. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just wanted what was mine. That weekend, Melanie tried again, this time trying to film me as she yelled in my driveway, hoping to twist the narrative. My grandmother opened the door and pointed to the security camera mounted above the porch. "Keep yelling," she said. "You're building your own case." Melanie left cursing. It became obvious they weren't going to leave peacefully. Every move they made reeked of desperation. My lawyer told me they were probably hoping to push me into reacting, physically, emotionally, legally, so they could stall the process or flip the blame. But I didn't bite. Not this time. I stayed focused. I was 15 days away from reclaiming everything, and nothing they did would change that. The eviction date finally arrived. I barely slept the night before, running through every worst-case scenario in my head. My lawyer met me early that morning, and together we drove to the house, this time with a police escort. I had the court documents, the police had the report, and I had zero intention of backing down. When we pulled up, the place looked the same from the outside, calm still, but inside chaos was brewing. Troy came out first holding a hockey stick like some kind of threat. But when he saw the cruiser behind us, he froze. His face twisted into something between anger and fear. "You brought the cops?" he snapped. I didn't answer. One of the officers stepped forward, handed him a copy of the order, and said plainly, "You've got to vacate now." Sandra stormed out a second later, yelling about how I was destroying the family. She kept saying the same thing. "You're heartless. She's pregnant," as if that erased everything they'd done. Melanie appeared in the doorway behind her, holding her stomach like it was a shield. I said nothing. Let them perform. The officer asked me if I was willing to give them more time. I shook my head. They had 30 days. They spent every one of them threatening me. The officer didn't push. "You have 3 hours," he told them. "Pack and leave, or we'll escort you out." The tension in the air was thick. Troy muttered curses under his breath as he slammed the door. Sandra kept yelling, mostly nonsense about betrayal and loyalty. Melanie tried one last guilt trip. "You're throwing out an unborn child." But it didn't land. My lawyer stayed beside me the whole time. 3 hours passed like a slow drip. But when the clock ran out, they were still packing. Officers knocked. "Time's up." Troy tried to shoulder past me, but the cop stepped between us. "Don't even try it," he warned. And that was it. The house was almost empty. The door was about to close. For good. They left. Not with dignity, not with grace, just with bitterness and boxes. Sandra was the last to walk out. She paused at the door like she expected someone to stop her. No one did. Troy mumbled something under his breath, Something about how this isn't over, but no one listened. Melanie sat in the back seat of their car, arms folded across her belly, eyes burning holes through the windshield. I stood on the porch and watched them pull away, their old SUV rattling down the street like a dying animal. And just like that, it was quiet. Too quiet. I walked through the house slowly, room by room. It didn't feel like home. Not yet. Years of their presence had soaked into the walls, twisted everything into something unfamiliar. But now it was mine again, legally, physically, finally mine. My lawyer handed me the keys, then passed me the paperwork for a restraining order. Just in case, he said. I nodded and signed. We filed it that same day. They weren't allowed within 100 feet of the property. No visits, no excuses, no more games. I changed the locks, installed a new security system, and took down every trace of them. Curtains, furniture, even the old family photos Sandra had put up. I wasn't erasing history, I was reclaiming it. My grandparents came by later that evening. My grandfather walked the perimeter with me, while my grandmother sat on the porch swing and cried, not out of sadness, but relief. Your dad would be proud, she said softly. I didn't answer. I just sat beside her and let the silence settle. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Not joy, not triumph, just peace. No more shouting, no more pretending, no more living like a guest in my own story. The house was quiet, and for the first time in my adult life, the silence didn't hurt. It healed. It's been 3 months since they left. The house is no longer empty. I rented it to a young couple expecting their first child. They're kind, responsible, and excited to build memories here. Something I never got to do. With the income from the lease, I finally launched my own business. It's still small, but it's mine. Every decision, every risk, every late night, I own it. Just like I now own the silence that used to haunt me. People ask if I've heard from Sandra. I haven't. Not a word. The restraining order stands and she knows better than to test it. Troy disappeared. Melanie moved in with a cousin, from what I've heard. It's strange how a house once felt like a battlefield, and now it's just an address on paper. I still visit sometimes, not to dwell on the past, but to honor what my father left me. I replaced the dead shrubs with a small garden out front. Peppers, basil, a few cherry tomatoes. Nothing fancy, just growth. Quiet, steady growth. My grandparents still live nearby. Every Sunday, we have breakfast together. No drama, no tension, just coffee, eggs, and peace. They say they've never been prouder. I don't know if I'm proud. I'm just free. And that's more than I ever expected. Looking back, it wasn't about the house. Not really. It was about boundaries, about standing up for the kid I used to be, about finally choosing myself over people who use love as leverage. I used to think family was everything. Now I know, family is who shows up, not who shares your blood. And sometimes the greatest justice isn't revenge. It's walking away, building your own life, and never looking back.